What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. Today, we're going to break down the NHL standings. As we film today, it is Thanksgiving, and there's a really interesting stat of the NHL standings as they stand at Thanksgiving traditionally. Around in the past, it's been projected around 78% of teams that hold a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, then will end up holding a playoff spot at the end of the season. Last year, that clip was pretty close to that, around 75%. So 12 out of the 16 teams that were in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving ended up being in the playoff picture come the end of the season. So, this video, we're going to break down what the standings look like right now divisionally, and then kind of reference back to that 75% clip and see what teams that are outside of the playoff picture could jump in, what teams that are in the playoff picture look vulnerable to drop out, and then who we really feel have locked up their spots in the playoff picture, even though it's only November. There's still a lot of hockey to be played. So I think that's why this stat is so interesting.
Yeah, there is a lot of hockey left to be played, but even now, as we're looking at the standings, there is separation between those teams that are in, those teams that are looking to get in, and those teams that are out. So let's just get right into it with the Pacific Division. You have Vegas, and they're a lock. At this point, we were very wrong about them. The injury bug has not affected them, so their elite talent is clicking and they're playing well. The goalie situation without Robin Leonard, they've made it work and it looks sustainable. So for this season, I think that trio of backups will get them through to the playoffs. And I am a little wary of injuries, but they should be fine. Then we look at Seattle, and they've probably been the story in the West as a team that hasn't come out of nowhere, but has exceeded expectations. We knew they were going to be solid. We expected them to play like this last year in their inaugural season, and they're getting to it this year. I think the talent is starting to increase with that solid hockey. So I do expect them to maintain this, but you do look for the teams below to jump up and push them down. And with that, I do expect them to drop, not in play, just in standings. Then we look at the LA Kings, and I think they're doing exactly what we expect them to do. So they're playing sustainable hockey. I think they will hold this spot in around three, maybe four. Now we'll move on to the Central, and we have Dallas on top, which is a surprise in some sense, but when you see how they're doing it, it all adds up. Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin are back. Pete DeBoer has the blue line contributing to their offense, and they have that depth to back up their two top scoring lines with also the Pavelski, Hintz, and Robertson line. Dallas is playing hockey that should keep them in and around the top. When you look at who's below, there would be no surprise if they drop off a bit, but I think Dallas will be a top tier team in the Central for this season. Right below them are the defending champs, the Colorado Avalanche. They don't need the one seed. They're kind of like Tampa when they were going to their three finals. They're just waiting till the playoffs. They are missing Landeskog and Byram, and that will hurt them a bit, especially in the regular season, but they should be fine. Goaltending, I think, is going to be another area they're going to have to get some support from, just better performances. But overall, it's Colorado. They'll be fine. Then we move on to Winnipeg, who has that three seed. Again, this is another team that's exceeding expectations. But when you look at the talent in that organization, you look at last season, and it should be no surprise. They are a great team, and now it's clicking. They will miss Nikolai Ehlers, but they should be fine. Hellebuck is playing at that Vesna level, and the offense is potent. It's what we expect from the Winnipeg Jets, so I think they'll be fine going forward. It's just a matter of how can they manage the loss of Ehlers. But now we'll look at the wild card race, and it's headlined by Calgary. And I think they're starting to click after all the adjustments they made this offseason. And then it's St. Louis. But St. Louis, I look at as a team that they give me anxiety as a viewer. I don't think they're going to hold that spot. They have a very suspect tandem in net. Bennington is very up and down, and they don't have Ville Husso to fall back on. It's Thomas Greiss this season. He's older. He's solid, but he's not a fringe starter. And behind them is Minnesota. This is another team. They are missing Fiala and Talbot, and currently they are missing Fleury, and they've been missing the first line center in Ryan Hartman. So this is, I think, going to be a season of growing pains because they do have a lot of young additions to learn the game, learn how they play, and chip in. Dean Evison is a great coach, and he's doing wonders with this team still. So they'll be sniffing around this spot, but I expect a drop off, especially when you consider the Edmonton Oilers are right behind them. Jack Campbell does need to be a whole lot better. They are relying too much on Stuart Skinner, and so far it hasn't taken them out of the race, but eventually it will. So they need a stronger performance in net and on their blue line, and they just need to settle in and start playing consistently. They're too up and down for a team that is off a conference finals appearance. Below them are the Nashville Predators, and at this point, I would say the Preds are out.
So, are there any teams in divisional spots? We talked about the wild card, but they're in divisional spots that you could see being part of that 25% that drop out of the playoff race.
I look at the Seattle Kraken as a team that obviously you expect them to drop off a bit because we're just not used to seeing a team like that play this well. Um, so I would expect them to be the team. LA does look weak at points. They're not among the elite when you look at the roster. So I do look at those two Pacific spots, and I do see the Kraken and the Kings as teams that could drop out. And that makes way for the Flames and Oilers to climb into those spots. And then there's a race in the wild card between them, the Kraken and Kings, the Blues, the Wild, and the Predators. And at that point, it makes it really easy for the Blues and the Wild to creep in and get five teams from the Central in the wild card race. But I don't see Seattle and LA dropping at this point because they're in the swing of things. They're playing sustainable hockey. So I really think there's only one spot available, and it should be Edmonton's. If not, St. Louis and Minnesota will battle it out. In terms of odds, I would go Edmonton, Minnesota, St. Louis, and then Nashville as that last spot. But I think it's got to be Edmonton because I just couldn't imagine them not making the playoffs.
And then we'll move on to the teams that it just seems like it's pack it in. How about next year in the
Try
Western
again next
Conference?
year. And I think that's the story for Vancouver because I look at that roster and this is a team that can work. They have everything they need. They just need to fill out the depth, especially behind Jack Hughes, especially behind Quinn Hughes on that blue line. And of course, they need a backup for Thatcher Demko. So please don't blow it up. But when you look at the San Jose Sharks, this is a team that really does need to blow it up in
Please blow it
whichever,
up.
please, in whichever way they can. I've heard rumblings of an Eric Carlson trade if they can retain salary. It's a long deal to retain, so I personally don't see it happening.
But
But
his value on the ice has never been higher.
well,
Maybe since that first season in San Jose. I mean,
yeah,
it's never been higher since he's been in San Jose
yeah.
since that first season.
Because defensively, I mean, he's not looking too hot. Offensively, he's leading the NHL defenseman in points. So I do like Eric Carlson, but I personally wouldn't trade for that contract. We've done a video on them. We're looking at guys like Vlasic, Couture. I think they're stuck with them. Hurdle and Meyer are interesting pieces, but that's not what this video is about. We'll move on to the next team, the Arizona Coyotes. They are rebuilders. They're right where they should be. Chicago Blackhawks, they're right where they should be. The Anaheim Ducks, we told you they'd suck. I didn't think they'd be this bad. I didn't think they'd be the bottom of the West, but they are here. They are a true rebuilder. They showed that last offseason when they just let Manson and Lindholm go. And I think the GM did come out and say they're not ready, and they're not. I think it's best for them to bulk up on some blue liners and some top end talent just to fill out their roster and help get them to a brighter future where they can make good playoff runs.
So with that, that'll wrap it up for the Western Conference. We'll move to the Eastern Conference right now, and we'll start with the Metro Division here.
Leading the Metro are the New Jersey Devils, who are off their win streak. They lost to Toronto in a controversial fashion after the three recalled goals. It is what it is. I look at this team, and they're definitely going to lose some games now because, I mean, you have to. You go on 13-game win streak. I mean,
It's
you
inevitable.
yeah. I see them as the talented Buffalo Sabres where you saw in years past, even this season, they were very strong to start and then they drop off a bit. The difference is this team has the talent to sustain them through the season. They won't necessarily go on more 13-game win streaks, but at this point, they are a playoff lock. Are they a one seed? It's going to be tough because the Metro does have some good teams below them, but they're definitely bound, nothing to worry about. They just need to keep pushing. They've pushed through their goaltending issues, losing Blackwood, and they should be fine. Then at the two spot, we have the New York Islanders. They're a lot like the Dallas Stars. They're a team that is very solid defensively, but with Lane Lambert coaching their blue line to help on offense, it's definitely helped their scoring. Matty Barzell does not score goals, but he gets assists for days. This team is good. They're playing sustainable hockey. I think they'll be in and around here. I'd probably see them drop off to the three spot, especially when you consider it's Carolina right behind them. They're on their heels. It's the Hurricane. They should be the best in the division since the Rangers are lower at this point. I think now this is more of a hot take because a lot of people are high on the Hurricanes, and I've been high on the Hurricanes in years past. And I think those were the years for them to win. They did lose a lot of depth. So going forward, I think that does hurt them as being among the elite in the NHL, and we're seeing it now. But they'll still cruise to a 1 or 2 seed. They are missing Anderson, Pacioretty, and Teravainen. Pacioretty is eyeing a return. He is skating, so we'll see what happens there. And it'll be interesting what they do in net. Obviously, they still have Ranta, but I don't know how many games you want to play him in because he also is injury prone. So we'll see what they do going forward, but they should be around here. And when they're healthy, they should climb the standings. Then we'll move on over to the Atlantic. We have the Boston Bruins, and they have exceeded expectations. We knew they'd be sniffing around the playoffs, but we didn't expect them to be this dominant, especially considering the age declines we anticipated in Bergeron. We didn't know how Krejci would look coming back, but this team is being fueled by their last dance vibes. I think it's a final year to make a cup run and they're looking like they can do that. With Olmark in net, he has been my Vesna winner so far. That obviously can change, but he's been phenomenal in net. And obviously, they went through injuries, which makes this run look that much more impressive. And they have had an easy schedule. And as the schedule gets tougher, they're healthy. McAvoy and Marchand are back. So I think at this point, the Boston Bruins are sustainable. At two are the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, on one end, I look at this team and they should have another gear, but they're missing arguably their three best defenders in Riley, Brody, and Munson. They still have Giordano and Sandin, but that's huge. Samsonov's also out, so Matt Murray will be relied upon to kind of carry them through these injuries. The rest of the boys, they'll have to step it up on the back end, play some solid hockey on in their own zone to keep the pucks out of the net. They just need to stabilize and somehow, some way get healthy. But it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are an elite team. I think they'll stay in and around two, maybe three, if the injuries do hurt them. But we'll see. At three, I see this as a fake three spot for the Detroit Red Wings because that's Tampa Bay spot because they do have the same amount of points, but they just need to keep looking and don't look down because there are a lot of good teams below them. Now we get into the wild card. It's headlined by the New York Rangers. That's got to be a playoff lock. They're a very good team. Shesterkin hasn't been Vesna good, and we're starting to see what this team looks like without a godlike goalie. Either way, they should be a lock at this point. Then you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. Um, they're not quite where they want to be. They don't want to be a wild card team. I think they do need to get in that three spot and start to separate themselves from the rest of the league, but they're playing okay considering how tired they should be after three finals appearances. And I think that's what's kind of dropping them right now. Obviously, they're missing Sorelli, but it's a blend of that coming off of three finals appearances, being just exhausted. And like New York, Vasilevsky hasn't been that Vesna goalie that they need to accelerate them, especially as they've lost so much pieces over the years, but they should be fine. Where I get a little concerned is when you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins, although they're old and crusty, they do have an easy schedule, and you can almost project playoffs for this team. And right below them are the Florida Panthers, and that is your President's Trophy winner off of last season. So these are two teams that you can't count out. But then I look ahead of them and I don't see any teams outside of the Detroit Red Wings that could lose their spot. So when I look at it, I can see Tampa getting that 3 spot because they technically have it. And then I look at Pittsburgh is probably going to be that team to take that spot. I personally think Florida's out at this point just because they lost a lot over the offseason and it's going to be really tough in the East. Good teams have to lose their spot. But that's kind of it for the race in the East. And then we'll wrap with the rest of the East. The Montreal Canadiens are playing well, but not well enough to make the playoffs. I think it's another season of growing pains. We looked at the Philadelphia Flyers. It's another team with a great start, but they're falling back, and I think they will continue to drop. The Washington Capitals, like the Pittsburgh Penguins, they are old, crusty, but they're hurt. And I think that keeps them out of the playoffs this year. They are missing Backstrom and Wilson, who should be back soon. Orlov and Brown are also huge losses, but there are a lot of good teams, and Washington wasn't strong enough to overcome those losses like the Boston Bruins. So I think they're also out. The Buffalo Sabres, they were looking like a playoff team, but the Buffalo Sabres do Buffalo Sabres things. They still need some elite talent on the top of their roster. And until then, I think this is about where we can expect them to be. I think it's better that they play slower, especially in a draft like this one. They can pick up hopefully a top 6 forward or a future top 6 forward to help them out as they look to make sustainable playoff runs. We look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, another team we told you they'd suck. I also did not think they'd be this bad like the Anaheim Ducks, but they are. They are missing Werenski and Merzlikins, but they were out of it before this. And then I look at that goaltending situation. Honestly, they may be better off without Merzlikins this year. He hasn't been too strong. We'll see what they do going forward, but yeah, it's better luck next year for them. The biggest disappointment, in my opinion, are the Ottawa Senators. We personally weren't too high on them. We didn't think they'd make the playoffs, but we expected them to be sniffing the wild card race at least. Of course, they are missing Shabbat and Norris, and that's been huge. But a young team with the amount of different pieces they have, bringing in Giroux and DeBrincat, they should be a whole lot better than this. They need to continue to develop. They need to click. And DJ Smith, yeah, my eyes are on him because he may be a coach that has a shorter leash than the rest. But at this point, it's better luck next year for the Ottawa Senators and the teams from 5 to 10 in the East.
And with that, that'll wrap up the Eastern Conference and the video today overlooking or looking at the NHL standings. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below who you think are playoff locks at the American Thanksgiving mark, who you think could drop off, who you think could rise into a playoff spot. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below as always, and we'll see you in the next video.